Good morning. My name's Adam Smith. I'm the moderator of the church council. I asked Michael to give me an opportunity to speak to you this morning. He kind of gave an indication on his future plans, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to kind of talk about that while he wasn't here. I'm not a seminary-trained preacher. What I know about preaching, I learned from my mom. And what my mom taught me about preaching was, she said, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. And so I'll start with saying the council has been working for most of this year, visioning into the future, what does our church look like in the next 5-10 years. Michael has graciously helped us out by putting some framework around sort of some of the issues we're going to have to work with, in letting us know that what he'd like to do is have an opportunity to spend a little bit more of his time working on preaching and teaching and the Sunday experience and less time on some of the ministerial stuff that pastors do to help the church keep going, and has asked the council to kind of think about what that might look like. And so we're going to be starting that process, and after Rally Day starts, but certainly over the next couple months, we're going to be engaging with you all to help figure out what that looks like. But we met with the council the other day, and we're just really excited about the opportunity this is going to provide, not just for Michael to allow him to kind of transition into a role that he really is excited about and wants to foster, but also the church to see what a vision of what we would look like when we're working together to do church and not just kind of relying on Michael to take care of it on his own. In the preparation for this, when I spoke to you several months ago and talked to you about church council deliberations, we talked a little about, first, kind of before you can think about where you're going, you got to know who you are. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about who I am. And now, like all of us, I am multiple things. I'm a husband, a father, a lawyer. There's all sorts of things that make up who I am. But at my essence, at my core, what I am is a trumpet player who sells fruit. And if you don't know me well, you might not know that. You might know I play trumpet. I don't play up the fruit stuff. I don't like to brag. But at my office, I've got my diplomas from undergrad and law school. I've got my licenses from Missouri and Kansas, and I have them neatly in their tubes in a drawer someplace. But on my wall is a mounted picture of my apron, my cash apron that I used when I used to run several fruit stands up in Ottawa over the summers during undergrad. Before I came down here for school, my girlfriend's father, who was a fruit monger, famous fruit monger up in Canada, he opened a fruit stand on a 3-block walking mall just outside the other side of the street from the Parliament buildings up in Ottawa, Canada's capital. Really just behind what was then the U.S. Embassy before you guys tore it down and built this monstrosity. But anyway, it's fine. But anyway, so this walking mall, like in a lot of downtowns, had become kind of deteriorated. This was where the old Woolworths was and everything like that. So a lot of boarded up stores, and this area, which was a government district, a lot of government workers, a lot of people, a lot of tourists, and there just wasn't anything on this walking mall, and the city decided to rejuvenate it by putting in a bunch of artisanal stands, farmers markets, things like this. And he had one stand, and because the city didn't want any one person to have too much. He didn't want it to be a big shopping mall. He wanted it to be individual farmers market-like things. But farmers don't know how to sell fruit. Farmers know how to grow fruit, but they don't know how to sell fruit. And this is what the city didn't understand. But my boss knew how to sell fruit, and he taught us how to do it. And by the end of that first summer, we had taken over all the other farmers market stands, and we had 5 or 6 stands up and down the mall. And then my boss, my friend's dad, moved on, and we ran it. We ran it the rest of my college career. So we had these 5 or 6 stands, and the next year what we decided to do was we were going to choose our best staff, and each one of them was going to run their own stand. We bought the fruit in the morning, did all the stuff that entails about getting a produce stand set up, but we had our best person running each stand. And it's more entailed than you think. We don't just set up a folding table. We had these beautiful two-part U-shaped stands. Each one was several hundred pounds, and you'd wheel it out in the casters from where we kept it in the old abandoned Woolworth store, and we'd wheel it out and you hooked them together so you had a little space in the middle and big things on the outside. I mean, it was just hooked up the skirt around it. You had all your boxes of fruit underneath to replenish. You set up your displays, you made your signs, and you had to get all this kind of accomplished before the lunch rush, because when the lunch rush came, you were going crazy and you were selling fruit. And then you did the afternoon rush, the evening kind of going home crowd, and then you tore it all down, put it all away, and you started again the next day. And so this is what we were going to do, and we had a great time. Josh and I, my partner, we got up at 4 in the morning, went to the fruit stands, or the wholesalers, bought our fruit, filled our van, went down, distributed all the fruit, and then our crack team went out and took care of stuff. But things started going off the rails relatively quickly. Although each was our best person, it's a difficult job, and they started off great, but as the summer wore on, people needed days off, people didn't show up on time. We'd go down to visit the stands after we were making our rounds, and they hadn't made the signs right, they had the prices wrong. They'd sometimes put the nectarines next to the peaches, but you have to have a color break of plums in the middle. And by the end of the summer, we ended up really hating our staff, and we had this grand plan that we were going to fire everyone and make everything better the next year. We told our boss about it, his dad, and said, we hate them all, they're all horrible. We're gonna do it. And he looked at us after he heard our complaints and our plan, and he said, have you guys been getting very much sleep? So I learned a valuable lesson that day about making sure you always get enough sleep before you make important decisions. That said, what we did the next year differently, instead of having one person run each stand, and that was their little fiefdom, we hired 3 times as many people as we had the year before. We had someone come did the opening, we had someone come and overlap them at lunch during the busy season, and then someone came and took it over afterwards to go through the nighttime, do the evening shift. And therefore, if people needed miss, we had lots of more staff to kind of draw from and cover and this kind of stuff. And we were worried that it would just be too many cooks in the kitchen and we wouldn't be able to manage it properly. But it turned out it was a wonderful blessing. It was not only did we have the people that could do what needed to be done, but they helped each other, they supported each other, they kept each other accountable. If someone didn't show up back from lunch for some reason or the guy did, they were there to take care of it. People learned what they were good at, and we learned what they're good at. So if someone was really good at setting things up and making the stand look all beautiful, then we'd make sure they did the morning shifts, and we'd have someone else come in because they were this great salesman who could really upsell. Upsell's a big part of selling fruit. Do you want some strawberries with that? It's very important. So if people were good at that, they'd come in at the lunch hour, and they just had a wonderful experience. But as a team, we really flourished. We did a lot more stuff together. We took intentional breaks and had parties and things like that. I mean, it was a good time. And Josh and I especially went from being, guys who were HR managers that every minute of our day was concerned about, is everyone happy? Is people showing up? Is everything getting done? And we went back to being fruit sellers, who we like to do in the first place, and quizzing ourselves on, what type of cherries we're going to get and how many and how we're going to sell them and what we're going to price them at. And that's what we like to do anyway. So it worked out for not just, our sanity, but also it made for a better team going forward. So that's what brings me to this guy here. This is Adam Smith. This is not me. This is the other Adam Smith, one of the other Adam Smith. There's plenty of us out there. This is one of the more famous ones. This is Adam Smith. People know him as an economist. Are there any economists here today? That's probably for the best. He wasn't really an economist. He was a philosopher in Scotland back in the end of the 19th century. Good buddies with David Hume, another philosopher. But he was credited with essentially founding the school of economics as we think of it today. And he had a theory called absolute advantage. And this is the time when countries are growing and maturing and the Industrial Revolution is just kind of getting underway. And so he was thinking a lot about international trade and how does economics work in a globalized society. And the theory of absolute advantage is if my country can produce something more efficiently, cheaper, faster than your country, then I should produce that and trade it with you for what you produce fastest, best, most inexpensively. And that works for both of us. And as you look through, countries across the world, if we stuck with that formula, you do what you're best, you do, if you're better, you do that, if you're better, you do that, and then we trade as opposed to all of us kind of flopping around trying to do everything. And it was a good theory, but it wasn't the best theory. There was another economist, you don't need to know his name, this is the only economist's name who you need to know, came up with something called comparative advantage. And comparative advantage, the problem with absolute advantage is it relies on two willing partners, one of whom does something better than the other, and the other does something better than the former. And that's not always the case. It's often not the case, especially when this new country called the United States was really starting to get rolling, and they tended to do everything better than everyone else. So what's the advantage for them to be getting in this trading relationship? And what this economist said, postulated his theory that worked out tremendously and continues to be something that international economists work on today when it comes to international trade, this comparative advantage, which says even if you don't do something as good as the other, if you do what you're best at, then it frees them up to do what they're best at. And if we all just do the thing that we are best at, then we still benefit from this trading relationship. Let me say that again. So in a world where Canada produces maple syrup better than any other country, they produce more of it and they trade it, and then they trade it with, let's say, the United States for computer parts. But ironically, Vermont makes syrup better and more efficiently than Canada. It hurts a little to say, but they do. And there was a time when Vermont, that was their primary export, and they produced far more than Canada produced of maple syrup. But now that's not the case because of the theories of comparative advantage. Even though Vermont could produce more and better, cheaper maple syrup, not better, that's the wrong word, cheaper maple syrup than Canada, Canada did that best. And so Canada started ramping up and becoming the world's leading exporter of maple syrup, where Vermont, surprisingly, is really good at making computer parts, and they manufacture and make computer parts, and that's their primary export this day. So even though Vermont probably could do both those things better than Canada, they both do better when each does what they are best at. That's what they focus their time, attention, and energy on. So we don't really know what it's going to look like in the future when Michael starts to kind of dial down some of his responsibilities outside of the Sunday morning service. But I think if we find ways that we can kind of pick up the other things that need to happen to make the church a living organism, a thing that does really well, we just need to focus on, Michael's doing what he does best, and it's going to be exciting to see what that looks like when he's allowed to focus on those things that he does best, that gives him the most joy, that fulfills him in such a way, and he's got the time and energy and rest to do that. But I'm also excited to see how that's going to look when we, who maybe have lazily relied upon, let's just get the best guy who's good at everything, and he'll just go and do it all, and we'll just sit here and enjoy it, if we step up and start doing just a little bit more of giving of our time and our talents and our energy in things that we like or that we think we're good at or things that empower us or excite us, I think that could be better for the church as a whole. So we are going to be coming to you as the council and asking you to kind of sit. We're going to do some small groups. We're going to listening circles, talk about what you think, what you feel like. We'll also be issuing some kind of FAQs to what exactly are we being asked to take a look at and where are we asking to go. But I'd like you to think about that in the context of happy for you to share your concerns or fears, but also what you're excited about, where you think you can help out, what you think you can do best. Because when we do that, I think we will become a more dynamic and holistic church as we're all excited and wanting to see. So if you join me quickly in prayer. Gracious God, thank you for the continued opportunity to participate in this welcoming and innovative congregation. We ask that you continue to be with us and work in our lives to be the best church, the best people, and the best children of yours that we can be. We ask these things in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ. Amen.